Back 45 program. This is the first webinar series of others to follow. They will all be beef cattle related. During the presentation, we will have a number of poll questions for you to answer. They'll pop up on your screen. You can answer those by clicking on the choice that best suits your decision. And we ask that if you have questions during this presentation, you can type those into the chat board or hold those until the end when we open up the floor for discussion. Also, when you leave the meeting, you'll be given another pop-up screen will show, and you will be given a choice between a thumbs up or a thumbs down to rate this program. And so I guess I should introduce myself. I am Jeff Roby, the program coordinator for the OQBN program. I'm going to do my best at emceeing this. We're excited to have everybody here. This is new for us with the OQBN program. And so without further ado, this week's speaker is Kelly Raper, Extension Livestock Marketing Specialist, and she will discuss Back 45 program health and management influence on calf prices. So with that, I guess we will turn it over to Kelly.
Can you all hear me okay?
I can hear you fine.
Great. All right. Well, welcome. We'll get started. I put the schedule up for the lunchtime series just so you could take a look at that if you hadn't looked closer at the series webinars that are to come. So take a good look at those. I think you'll find them all useful. Today, I'm going to visit with you about health and management practice influence on calf prices. So we're going to talk about that in the context of VAC 45 programs. The first thing I want to share with you, and you all know this, we want to manage our calves for value. And one thing about calves on the ranch is when we're moving them off the ranch, it's really stressful for those calves. You're suddenly taking them away from the only environment they've ever known. Their immune systems are young and maybe not fully developed. You're taking them into an environment where they're mixed with other cattle. And so managing that calf health is really critical, not only for cow-calf producers, but for those folks on down the supply chain in the beef industry. One key thing to remember is that you want to avoid simultaneously weaning a calf, mixing it with other calves, and moving it. So think about that like you would think about, when your child goes off to school for the first time or to daycare for the first time, and they're suddenly mixed in with a lot of other children who have some different germs to share. And so you spend a lot of time managing illness as they get exposed and build their immune systems to those new germs that they're exposed to. So the main idea of the VAC 45 program is, one, we want to prepare calves for that movement, and two, we want to manage the way that we do it so that we're not throwing them in a kettle, so to speak, all at once. And some of the benefits of lowering that stress of movement are increased feedlot and carcass performance measurements, and the fact that for you as the cow-calf producers, buyers recognize that value that you're adding to the calf. You may be asking, what is a VAC 45 program? Some of you may be very familiar, and in fact, you may be participating in one or have in the past. Some of you may not really have an idea of what's included in that kind of program. Some of the basic things that are included in the program are castration of male calves. So bulls to steers, we're marketing steers as feeder calves, not bulls. And we want those healed before they're marketed. Another characteristic is we want to manage horns. So whether that's through dehorning or through using polled genetics, we want to make sure that we are are taking care of those horns before those calves leave the ranch. And that's a safety issue for the calves and for humans as well. Another item is having a minimum of 45 days weaning period on the ranch. So taking them away from their mamas at least 45 days before you plan to market those calves. And that keeps them in an environment they're familiar with while they're adjusting to not being with their mothers. So that's crucial to helping them develop their immune system and to make that move less stressful when you take them off the ranch. Most programs will have a specific vaccination protocol that you follow. Some will have some flexibility. Some will be very strict. Bunk training, bunk broke, getting those calves used to eating from a feed bunk is typically recommended. Most VAC 45 programs are going to require home-raised calves. There are some specific programs out there for put-together calves that will require some additional things from me. If you're going to the sale barn and buying calves and then preconditioning those, there are some programs for you. But the bulk of VAC 45 programs are for home-raised calves and then moving those from the ranch. Deworming is also recommended in most programs and required in some. So that's a basic idea of the practices that are involved in a preconditioning program. I want to take a look. Got two computers going here and I'm clicking the wrong key. I want to take a look at what those practices that you do on the ranch, what benefits to those bring to the buyers of your cattle. If we look at results from a survey of Texas and Southwest Cattle Raisers Association feedlot managers, they reported that preconditioned calves, so the calves who've been through a VAC 45 type protocol versus calves that are not preconditioned, they have fewer sick animals, they have a lower death loss rate. Those calves gain better, which means fewer days in the feedlot before slaughter, which means cost savings. They convert feed from their pound to gain ratios is better. The percent choice, the percent of those animals that grade choice is 50% as compared to about 36% for non-preconditioned animals. So again, higher value, higher quality beef. And the percent of those animals that are outs when they go to slaughter is also much lower. And a lot of you are familiar with Glenn Selk. He says that non-weaned calves, in a study that he was involved with, that were 3 to 4 times more likely to experience bovine respiratory disease than those weaned calves. And there's a lot of evidence now that says calves weaned that less than 30 days are really no different in terms of their immune system and their health attributes than those that are weaned directly on the truck. So the gist of that is longer weaning periods are better because it gives the calves longer to actually develop that immune system before they're mingled with other calves from other ranches. All right, you guys are going to see a poll question. It might be the one I'm thinking and it might not, but we'll see. And while you guys are answering that, I'm gonna, let's see. Yeah, while you guys are answering that, I'm gonna keep talking. Except I have to move the poll question because I can't see my own screen now. Here we go. All right, so we talked about the benefits of a VAC 45 program to the buyer. So you may be thinking, well, yeah, but what about me, right? I'm doing the work, so what's in it for me? What's in it for you is that you will be marketing those calves at a heavier weight when it comes to marketing time. That weight gain during the preconditioning period will add extra pounds to that calf, so extra value. You'll have less shrink at sale time. Those calves are heavier, they're healthier, they're going to shrink a bit less. And another benefit is you're going to market into the typical seasonal swing of prices, where if you look at price patterns, and we'll do that in just a minute, we tend to hit our lows for calf prices in September, October, And that's because I'm looking at your poll, and lots of your spring calvers, and that's great. There's not an issue with that. But what that does mean is a majority of calves come to market September, October. And so by preconditioning and keeping those calves on the ranch for 45 more days, you're pushing your marketing time later into the fall, and that's going to push you into the time period where prices actually start to move back up in a typical year. So we'll look at that more closely in just a minute. The other benefit for you is that you can capture potential price premiums. Those premiums are for healthier calves, what are seen to be as healthier calves and lower risk calves. All right, so I see some of you are both spring and fall, and lots of you have been weaning for that 45-day period. So lots of you are implementing these practices on the ranch, and that's great. And for those of you who aren't necessarily doing that right now, well, hopefully we can just provide you some good information that can help you make decisions in the future. So, all right, I've got a poll across all my stuff, so give me a second here. Uh-oh, my screen's stuck. There we go. We're about to have an issue. All right, so this is that seasonal price index representation that I was talking about. So what all these lines on the screen represent is, in a typical year, this is how prices tend to move. And so if you look, if you can see my cursor, we're going to look at the blue line, which is for 475-pound steers. So if we take January as the base at 100, then it would tell you, if we go up here to March, prices in March tend to be almost 5% higher than they are in January. And then we start the slide down and we hit the bottom in terms of the typically lowest price of the year occurs in September, October. So somewhere in that range. Same for 575-pound steers. So if you think about what you're doing with preconditioning, rather than bringing those calves to market, right here where we're in the lowest part of the seasonal price swing, you're going to market later into November, December. You're going to hit this area where prices are beginning to move back up. And so not only do you get the benefit of the premiums for adding the health characteristics, you also get the benefit of those prices beginning to move back up. All right, so in Oklahoma, you guys just told me a lot of you are doing a lot of these things. I just want to give you a glimpse at what your cohorts across the state are doing. These results are from a survey that we did. We did a survey back in 2009, and we did another one in 2018, which asked for 2017 data. And some of you may, in fact, have answered these questions. It came in a survey from National Agricultural Statistics Service through Oklahoma City. And we'll be doing that again here in a couple of years. So if you do get one of those surveys, I ask you to please respond, please fill it out. It just helps us learn a little bit more about how we can help you. At any rate, so this is what your cohorts across the state in 2017 reported that they were doing. So you can see that castration and horn management, which is either dehorning calves or using polled genetics so the horns aren't an issue. And that's, so of the horn management, 29% of those who are managing horns are doing that through polled genetics. And then 73% of you are deworming. And so that looks pretty close to what you all reported in the polls. So if we think of those as a base group, those first 3 items, then if we look at the next 3, 45-day weaning, respiratory vaccinating protocol, feed bunk training, those 3 are typically what we would layer into those base practices to form a preconditioning VAC45 protocol. So if you recall one of those first slides that I showed, it will list all of these as either required, which is most of them, or highly recommended. And so you bundle those together as a package and you've got a preconditioning protocol. These bottoms, and you can see that those numbers are less, about 50% are doing 45-day weaning before marketing calves. Feed bunk training, that seems to be more common, even if you're not weaning them for 45 days. And it may be that some of you are weaning shorter periods, but you're still getting those calves adjusted to eating from feed bunks. About 42% of you are implementing respiratory vaccines. These last, or this bundle here in the middle, is the percentage of producers who are doing those practices together. So 62% of you are castrating male calves and managing horns. 56% of you are doing both of those things, but you're also deworming your calves. And then 24% are implementing all of those together as that preconditioning bundle or a VAC 45 type protocol. And then 20% of you are implanting calves. Poll question 2, I think you just did that one also, and it was the calving season, and it was pretty heavily shifted towards spring. And I don't know how to bring that back up, so I'm gonna talk about though why calving season might matter. So
Kelly,
first, yes.
let me, let's see, here we go. Share results.
There we go.
And they have to share all three at the same time, but.
No, that's fine. I minimized it because it was on my screen and I couldn't see. Okay, so some of you are both spring and fall, lots of you, okay. A few of you are year-round, some of you are fall only. All right, so that's a pretty good distribution. In just a minute, I'm gonna show you what your cohorts across the state are doing. And then I'm gonna let Dave pop that back up for me when I get to the last poll question. So
let me go ahead and drop it now.
Yeah, that'd be great. All right, so one of the things that we see when we take our calves to market, if you sit in the sale barn long enough, you probably start to notice that calves that come through in bigger lots into the sale ring tend to bring a little more money, even if they look just like the calves that came through before in a much smaller lot. There is value in lot size. And from 2010 to 2013, we collected sale data on, I believe, about 25,000 calves, a lot of calves in the state of Oklahoma. And we use that data to look at how much the number of calves that come through the ring together as a group, how much does that influence the prices that you receive? And so if you look here, it starts to have an impact pretty quickly. So those singles, you know, relative to a single, even selling calves in groups of 2 to 4, 6, you start to see that premium. So here on the vertical is the premium. So this would tell us if we go from 5 head, about right here, at 5 head, you're already getting $5 to $6 over a single, typically. And if we move that to about 10 head, it's another $2.58 a hundredweight. And then here, the increments get a little smaller, but they keep increasing as you move to bigger lot sizes. And so the reason for that is, you know, cattle buyers come in and they've got a trailer to fill. And it takes fewer lots to fill that trailer. If they're lucky, they can find one lot that they really like and fill it with that whole lot. So those larger lot sizes have some value for them. And those calves also tend to be more uniform maybe than calves in a smaller lot. And so that adds value to what they're selling. So what in the world does that have to do with your calving season? I know some of you are wondering why those are even close together here. Well, let's think about your calving season. The shorter that your calving period is, the more likely that you can market lots of calves that are pretty uniform. So even if you've got, let's say if you've got 50 to market, if you can split those into groups of 15 or 20 and market those as a pretty uniform group, then you're going to gain some value because of that lot size premium. So this is just a glimpse of what your cohorts across the state told us that they were doing. 66%. Well, actually, this isn't what they told us they were doing. They gave us, they told us what their calving season was, but we also asked what percentage of calves were born across, like month by month across the year. We took what they told us about percentage of calves born in a month, and then we calculated if 80% of their calves were born within a 12-week period, we called that a calving season. So that was the defined calving season. So 34%, based on the numbers they gave us, had a somewhat defined calving season. And then of those 34%, you can see that a lot of those were spring calvers, the majority, which is pretty consistent with the poll that you all responded to. Had some that were, these are divided up, winter would be early, like December, January, February. Fall would be, I believe that was September, October, November. So, and then some were doing both. So that would be the dual up here, doing both. Some were earlier, some were later. So at any rate, that's what your rancher friends across the state are doing. And it can make a difference. So Dave, could you pop that poll question back up for number 3?
What are you seeing now?
Ah, got it, yeah. So how much premium do you consider to be adequate incentive to participate? All right, and let's see. So you guys are kind of scattered across here. 8, 8, 10. All right, so keep those numbers in mind as we go through the next bit of the material. The screen seems to be stuck in. There we go. All right. So before we get to the premiums though, which is, the fun stuff, right? Let's talk about discounts first, because that's not as fun and we want to get it out of the way so we can talk about the more fun stuff. Some of the things that your calves can get discounted for at the market, if they're fleshy, and I looked up a few studies. It's a little bit harder to find measures of fleshiness and discounts related to that from a statistical perspective, but I did find a couple, and those ranged from $2 a hundredweight to $3.50 a hundredweight discount for calves that buyers considered too fleshy. So that's $10 to about $33 a head discounted if you bring those calves in. So that is one thing you want to manage. If you hold those calves on the ranch for that extra 45 days, you do want to make sure you're not adding too much flesh to them, because then the buyers perceive that as calves that they're not going to be able to take advantage of the weight gain on their end. So the next thing that is a big discount is bull calves. And if you bring a bull calf in as a feeder calf, and if you bring in mixed lots of steers and bull calves, and sometimes it's steers and heifers and bull calves, but if you're bringing those lots that have bulls in those, that's discounted $6 to $12 a hundredweight. So $30 to $60 a head. And our research has indicated that discount, if you bring that calf in a lot, that discount applies to the whole lot. Now, if it's one bull calf in a batch of 10 or 15, that discount's likely going to be on the lower end of that. But if you've got very many in there at all, that discount's going to get bigger. So that one is a big one. And honestly, we haven't done a lot of research to see if buyers pay a premium for knife cut versus banded. But in general, doing one of those is going to save you from getting that discount for bull calves. The other thing I would mention about castration is the earlier the better. After 3 months, those calves are more stressed when you castrate them. They're going to gain less for you. They're going to gain less in the feedlot. It's going to add additional time to get those calves to slaughter. So earlier is better, both from a performance standpoint and from an animal welfare standpoint, because the animals are less stressed when they're younger. The other thing that you can get discounted for is horns. So, and the information that I found on horns, about $3 to $6 a hundredweight. So, 16 to 32 a head roughly. That came from 2 or 3 different studies. So there's a range, and really any of these numbers I give you, there's a range, but it gives you an idea of what you might expect when you take those to the market. All right, I told the guys I talked too much and that 1 o'clock might be a stretch for me, but we'll see what we can do here. We're not going to hit 1 o'clock, but hopefully you guys are eating your lunch and you're happy and you're going to hang around for just a few more minutes. Some examples of VAC 45 programs. I just wanted to walk you through 2 or 3 of those. Superior Livestock Auction. We've all heard of them. They do great things for marketing cattle. You can go to their website and see what their programs are. The median lot size for cattle that go through the Superior auction runs right about 85 head. So they're bigger lots in general. And so they're going to get those lot size premiums as well. But their health management programs are quite respected as well. MFA Health Tracks program, you can find information on that. And there are lots of programs in the state. These just happen to be 3 that I could actually find reported premiums for. So those are the ones I'm going to look at. But there are others. There's some breed association programs that you can get involved with. I'm going to visit a little bit about Oklahoma Quality Beef Network. And I know at the end of this series, Jeff is going to do that as well. All right, so Superior's premiums, I did manage to find some kind of more updated premiums than we've been able to find before. But these premiums are relative to what they call their VAC 24 program. And their VAC 24 program is those calves are on the ranch, on the cow, but they're vaccinated at somewhere in the range of 2 to 4 months. They're given vaccinations, and then they're sold off the cow unweaned. And they used to report these premiums relative to calves that had had nothing done to them, basically pulled off the mom and taken to the sale. But they get less than 1% of those calves now in their market. And so they've changed their base to this VAC 24 program. Their VAC 34 program is similar. The calves are sold off the cow unweaned, but they get shots, I think 4 weeks before weaning, I believe is that one, 3 to 4 weeks before weaning. You can see the premium for that over the VAC 24, about 4 1/4 a hundredweight, and these are all per 100 pounds. So the VAC 45 program, which is what we're going to focus on, is about $8.63. So somewhere in that $8 to $9 range, a premium for those calves over the VAC 24 calves. So think about the additional things that have been done with that VAC 45 calf. One, they've been weaned. Actually, the VAC 24 calves have not been weaned. So the VAC 45 calves have had vaccinations. They've been bunk broke. They've been dehorned. They've been castrated, all those things, but they've also been weaned for 45 days. And so a lot of that value comes from giving all those vaccinations, time to help the calf build its immune system before it's taken off the ranch. Excuse me just a second, grab a drink of water. This is the time of year that I'm not a huge fan of trees and grass for a few weeks, but it'll all be good. I'm glad we have them. I just wish they'd quit pollinating. So, all right, so MFA Health Track premiums, they report these in dollars per head. I've translated them at the bottom. If you can see below each brick is the dollars per hundredweight. And so again, their program is fairly similar to something you do through Superior OQBN. But those values per head, you note that the value per hundredweight and value per head tends to go down as the calves get bigger. And if you think about why that might be, if you're buying a 750-pound calf, that calf's had a lot of time for its immune system to go ahead and develop. So you are mitigating some risk for the buyer, but you're mitigating a lot of risk for the buyer at that 450 weight. And then OQBN premiums, I'm going to show you a couple of slides of those premiums. This is from this year. And I will point out these are weighted averages, which is also likely what the health track premiums are as well. And basically what that means is these are compared to calves the same weight that did not have VAC 45 protocol. But they're not adjusted for things like the breed, some of those kinds of things that, we know there's some breeds that bring a little more than others. So this is an overall weighted average. And if you notice this, I'm gonna tell you straight off the bat, kind of ignore the 3 weights and ignore the 8 weights. And I say that because we don't get very many calves that come through the program in that weight range. We do get some, but in terms of placing a lot of stock in the premiums that are reported, I would focus more on the 4 weights to the 8 weights in terms of the premiums that those animals bring. And you can see at the lower weights, the steers tend to bring a higher premium. But as we get to those upper weights, the heifers catch up or exceed even. And there, there's a replacement effect in there, and we can't quite measure that at the market because we don't know which of those animals are actually being purchased as replacements versus purchased as feeder heifers. But it is interesting that they start to catch up. Overall, on the average, heifers this last year actually brought a higher premium per hundredweight than steers a little bit. But again, I think that's probably driven by the number of heifers that sold in that 6 weight range. And the premium was significantly higher for heifers than steers in that weight range. And that kind of drove that average to be a bit higher. But I just wanted to show you that to give you an idea of what premiums might be and to show you that they can differ across those weight ranges. This is a historical picture of OQBN premiums. Just to give you an idea, across the years, they've been relatively steady. Of course, in 2014, when prices were crazy, premiums were also really, really high. And that actually prompted us to start thinking of premiums, that maybe we need to be thinking of those in terms of a percentage of the actual market level price as opposed to straight dollars. We've always been able to look at it just in dollars per hundredweight instead of a percentage, because the market had stayed within kind of a range that made sense. But occasionally we get those outlier years that really push it. So, all right, and then I want to visit with you a little bit about probabilities and risk. Nothing is risk-free, as we know, and these days, sadly, going to the grocery store is not risk-free either. But I wanted to show you these numbers because a few years ago we did a study that took all the data that we collected at Oklahoma livestock auctions, and we looked at that data and tried to calculate the probability that adopting a practice or a set of practices would give you, the producer, a positive return. And so we made some assumptions about costs, and we got some reasonable estimates of costs for different things. And then we looked at all of that data and tried to look at the probability of positive returns for calves that had been weaned. And when I say weaned here, we mean here it's at least 30 days, if not more. And we tend to not mark them as weaned when we're collecting data if they're less than 30 days. So those would be at least 30 days. And you can see that the expected net returns would be about $5 a hundredweight with about a 60% probability. So 60% probability that the returns would be positive to you for your cost of weaning that calf and keeping it on the ranch. Vaccinations, about $6 with about a 64% probability of positive returns. Dehorn, $6.31, and you can see these are kind of reflecting those discounts that we talked about earlier for the dehorning. Again, about a 60% probability. Weaned and vaccinated together, $5.36. So you see that didn't necessarily stack up to $11, right? But it did add some value to do those things together at 60%. Weaned, vaccinated, and dehorned, all three together, comes close to $11 a hundredweight, and the probability of positive returns also jumps up. So again, some of those basic practices bundled can increase your returns there and increase the probability that you're going to actually make money over your cost. Weaned, vaccinated, dehorned, and certified. So that's going to be a full VAC 45 type program. net returns of almost $13, and the probability of positive returns jumps up to almost 80%. So one thing about VAC 45 programs and doing all the hard work on the ranch is, I just want to remind you that it's really important. It's really important to have good management practices. It's also really important to market your management. So if you're doing all that work on the ranch and you're working your tail off to have those calves be the best calves they can be, then by golly, incorporate that into your marketing. So you can just go sell your calves, which is one thing, but if you actively market those calves, I think you're going to find a better payoff for the things that you're doing. So, and related to that, the venue in which you sell those animals matters. If you're doing all these things and then you're taking your calf to a sale barn where they don't really get many of those kinds of calves, that also means they don't really get very many of those kinds of buyers. So think about that when you're thinking about where to market those animals. Think about taking them to a place where the volume of those kind of calves is higher, because it does draw in more buyers who are specifically looking for those kind of calves. That's one reason that like our special sales, I think, tend to do pretty well, because there's a critical mass of those calves and buyers know they're going to be there. And so they will come and bid for those to fill up their truck. And then reputation matters too. And, we talk a lot about reputation cattle in the industry, but I would say if you feel like you are too small to have a reputation, or don't have enough calves, or haven't been in the industry long enough to have that reputation, one thing third-party verification in a VAC 45 program can do for you is it can act as a proxy for your reputation. So it verifies this, this rancher has managed these calves well. They've done all the things they're supposed to do. They've done it right. And we're putting our stamp on it to say they've done the hard work. And so those things matter. So that's what I mean when I say marketing your management. Don't just sell your cattle, actively market those cattle. So find the places where they're going to do the best for you in terms of bringing those returns. And again, there's no guarantee ever. We can never have a guarantee in a market, but those are the things that in the long run are going to pay you well. So VAC 45 programs focus on both the management and the marketing. So make sure that you're doing the management things right, but then market that. And I'll just end with this quote. That value-added programs begin by removing some of the risk that buyers already assume exists in the specific group of cattle. So buyers are looking at cattle and trying to sort out what are the risks with me buying this set of cattle. So participating in a value-added program or implementing some of those management practices that, some of them are visible, some of them are not. The certification gives a reputation, and the certification to say, yes, these have been done, even though you can't see it. These cattle have been managed that way. So the programs take away some of the risks that the buyers would otherwise assume is in that group of cattle. So that's where your value comes from. All right, that's all I've got. I hope I didn't go too terribly long. Hope you guys enjoyed your lunch while you're listening. Any questions? Everybody's eating their sandwich or trying to decide if they answered the poll questions correctly. There were no wrong answers, so you all get an A.
Anyone have any questions for Dr. Raper?
Great job.
Thanks. And am I right that these slides will be available, right? For anyone to download or look at later?
Right. So these webinars will be available for future viewing by going to beef.okstate.edu. Here's a question. How do you get a third-party verification? So in week 6 of this program, we'll cover all the enrollment verification process type things. But how we do verifications is that either myself or area livestock specialists or the county educators will come out and inspect your cattle and make sure that you've gone through all the proper protocols in order to have your cattle verified. This one is from Robert Wells. For the probability and risk slide, are the price values only based on the sale price of calves with the measured trait versus calves without the trait? Does it take into account the value of the added weight of the calf compared to the wean value of the calf, wean versus unweaned?
So no, so that's a great question. So that's not going to include the value of the, well, I say that. Actually, I would have to look, Robert. That's a great question that I should investigate, because I think on the on the ones that say weaned, I think it does include the weight, but I'll have to double check that for you. So shoot me an email if I don't respond very quickly. I'll let you know, because it is a good point. When you hold those calves on the ranch, and I mentioned it earlier in the presentation, that when you hold those on the ranch for that 45 days, you not only get the value of adding to the calf's immune system, you get the value of those pounds that that calf is gaining while you're holding it there. And so I will have to see. I believe that that cost is included in there. I mean, that value is included in there, which would also be the cost. I might be able to pull it up on the other screen. I'll look at that way if you have other questions. Let's see if I can pull that up real quick.
Any other questions? So if there's no other questions, just want to tell you next week we have Rosalind Biggs, Beef Cattle Extension Specialist. Dr. Biggs will be discussing considerations in herd health programs designed for VAC 45 certification. Same time, same place. And like I said, these webinars will be available on beef.okstate.edu. With that, Kelly, thank you very much. And thank you all for being with us this week. We hope you'll join us again next week for session 2.
Thank y'all. If you come up with questions later, certainly feel free to contact me.
Thanks, everyone. Have a nice day.